America.
Only in America.
Only in America.
Only America.
Only in America.
This week, our final episode on helping Afghan evacuees resettle in communities across the U.S. and the ways this particular outpouring of welcome could, well, happen only in America.
That's an only in America story, and we should love that. Every generation of displaced people who have come to the United States have made it richer and stronger and have contributed to its society and to its culture and to this vision and ever striving reality of, being a place where dignity is conferred to all.
From the National Immigration Forum, I'm Ali Noorani, and this is Only in America. Over the last few weeks, we've had the honor and privilege of just sharing some amazing stories with you. From veterans who are seeking honor and healing as they help their allies evacuate safely from Afghanistan, to stories of individuals and organizations across the country working tirelessly to welcome arriving Afghans. For this final episode of the series, let's talk about the role of veterans and suit makers alike in making America a welcoming new home for Afghan evacuees. In particular, a diverse coalition made up of former presidents, business leaders, and so many more working together across the country to help Afghans resettle into communities. Welcome.us was founded in September of this year to give a warm welcome to new neighbors arriving from Taliban-controlled Afghanistan.
It was created in this moment of unity around supporting our Afghan allies, right? Close to 80% of Americans from all walks of life believe that we should be providing support and safety to, these Afghan allies. Close to the same number believe we should be providing safety and support to an ever broader segment of Afghan refugees. And a very significant proportion are interested in providing that support themselves, right? So it's a tremendous moment of unity that, again, presents an opportunity if we create the opportunity for that participation, that desire to assist, that desire to help, if we're able to amplify and lift up all of those welcomers, what we're reaching for is the opportunity to revitalize our shared culture of welcome and to revitalize that shared consensus about being a nation that welcomes.
That's Nazanin Ash, a global humanitarian leader and CEO of Welcome.us. It was the discouraging images and videos from the fall of Kabul that started things for the organization this summer. And here's Nadia Hashimi, a member of the Welcome.us National Welcome Council, recounting those first few weeks in August.
There was this collective sense of just shock. We were just watching. And I happened to be, that week of August 15th, I happened to be away with my parents, with my family, and with my in-laws. And I just remember us all being in, a room in just different seats, and everyone kind of glued to their phones. Everyone kind of, looking up every once in a while and naming a province that had fallen. And we were, hour by hour, just day by day, just watching it go. And still, as much as we had done advocacy, right? I had been involved with groups who had been doing advocacy, trying to get to people who are making decisions here in the United States and saying, let's do this withdrawal strategically. Let's plan. Let's, see what we can build, like what kind of framework we can leave in place. The reason for doing that advocacy was to prevent this type of situation. And yet, for some reason, this situation felt like such a shock. Like, how could this possibly have happened, even though this is what we were trying to prevent, what we've been calling out. And so it just, I describe it as a sense of profound grief. Like we had lost, almost like you'd lost a person, but it wasn't just a person. It was this big institution of our lives, even for people who were far removed from the country, who hadn't gone back in years, who hadn't gone back in decades, or, like me, were born and raised somewhere else. But it was such, because it's like the well of our culture, of our beginnings, of our ancestry. And for that reason, that country, that flag, like all the bits and pieces of it that had sort of, just been scattered into the wind, it was something that just caused profound grief in so many people. So it was very quiet. It was very, very quiet that week until we started mobilizing. And so we went from a moment of like shock and stillness into just overdrive. And the one word that my children, I have 4 kids, and I know Naz understands like clearly what it's like to manage this. But one word that my children learned that week and in the weeks that followed was the word crisis. And it was just, we're in a crisis right now. I'm sorry, I can't do that for you right now. We're in a crisis. We had to be on the phone. We had messages we had to answer. We had Google searches we had to do looking for options, because all of a sudden, people who had no intention of leaving Afghanistan were desperate to get out of the country. And so we're hearing from relatives who we hadn't really been in touch with very much, but all of a sudden, I've got a cousin who has daughters. What is she supposed to do with her daughters if they can't go to school? What is she supposed to do if she can't go back to work? What are any of these people supposed to do? What about the people in our family who had roles that, they weren't high-level politicians, but they were maybe police officers, security officers working with the parliament, things like that, where all of a sudden everyone is feeling like in the country that they don't know what's happening tomorrow. There's now a scarcity of jobs. There's a looming financial crisis. You've got winter around the corner, and you've got a group of people who are in charge who don't really know how to govern. They only have been an insurgency group. And so there was a lot of betrayal. There was a lot of confusion, chaos, resentment, just so many different feelings. I mean, like any emotion you could name was being felt across the diaspora and resonating, really coming from the country itself.
And the group has remained in overdrive since September, coordinating the immediate and overwhelming response to help.
What we had helped do was create a digital space for people from the diaspora community to connect and say, okay, this is what's happening in the DMV area on resettlement. This is what's happening in the Midwest. Who's out there? Who needs what? We've got mental health needs. We've got unaccompanied children, and just being able to kind of have a place like a hub where people could mobilize and find resources and make those connections, which are really important. And that's really what Welcome.us is doing on a more national scale, right? So the diaspora had been doing it on a more micro level, but we found that it was very helpful because you could get information out, you could get advocacy out, you can just find somebody. We've got a pregnant lady who needs a hotel room. She's just delivered. Like, what do we do? Okay, well, people have raised funds over here. Good. Who's booking the hotel? Like, all of these things were happening, and it was amazing, and it was rapid, and it was efficient, which was really nice. And, going forward, this is exactly what's happening. We've even got diaspora groups now who are shifting their focus and becoming resettlement agencies. We've got people who are, hooking up with other organizations, building bridges, expanding the community, organizing, fine tuning, and using the expertise that we've all developed because we've been here, we've become professions. We run the gamut now, right? We've got people who are in all different kinds of fields and bring all different types of expertise to the table. And, people who have companies, okay, I can open up some jobs. I can try to organize shelter. I can organize a food drive.
In fact, remember Deborah Lang with KindWorks and their soup making classes from a few episodes ago?
So she had asked me to cook soup, and I said, that's probably not a good idea, but I know a guy. and so it all worked out. I was in conversation with my dad. I kept him company while he made some really awesome soup. And so he taught everyone on a Zoom session how to cook Afghan butternut squash soup with an Afghan twist. And so he led this cooking session on Zoom. I recruit him for all kinds of ridiculous tasks, but he loves it. And then everyone, creates these big batches of this soup. They package it up in quarts. We're taking it to a drop-off point, and they're going to use that to feed newly arrived Afghan families.
It came together so much because of what Nadia is describing. So, it's an organization that's, 4 weeks old, and it came together around this outpouring of support for our newly arrived new Afghan neighbors. this was a moment that was bringing the country together. The desire to assist, the desire to support, from every corner of America and from every part of its tapestry, right? Its diaspora communities, its faith communities, its veteran communities, its private sector, its community organizations, individuals from all backgrounds. And it was a real moment of the country coming together in support. And Welcome.us was founded on that energy. The idea is to be able to organize this community of welcomers, right? To amplify the experience Americans are having as welcomers, and to build on that, and again, revitalize what has been, a long-held tradition of welcome, a long-held tradition of welcoming new Americans, and recognizing what a transformative experience it is, not just for those new Americans, but for us, for all of us. We really, our values are exhibited in the welcome that we show. And I think that, the history of immigration to the United States, as all of our histories demonstrate, is one of tremendous success and such a unique history. And I feel like when we're not divided, we find tremendous pride in that as Americans. And we found tremendous success in that as Americans, right? Go back to the beginning of this conversation. Only in America could this conversation be happening.
Welcome.us started exclusively as a reaction to the Afghan evacuation, but both Nadia and Naz say this is about helping any other person who is seeking protection in the United States.
This is kind of that harrowing middle part of the story. But when we're thinking, or when I'm thinking about the journeys of immigrants and these stories of why are people coming here and what's happening, for me, it's really important to focus on the true beginnings and then the endings, to understand where can we actually make an impact. And for me, the beginnings are foreign policy. What have we done? What has the United States done in Central America? What has the United States' involvement been in Afghanistan? What decisions have we made that might have been part of creating the need for people to flee those countries, that destabilization? And I think it's really tough to have those conversations, but it's so necessary to have those conversations, because, not understanding our foreign policy failures is a huge disservice to future generations. And it is in itself a foreign policy failure, right?
That is the ultimate hope and potential of the moment that we're in. And, the work of organizations like Welcome.us. We have a long and shared history of being a nation of refuge. We're a country of largely displaced people. We had a decades-long history of not only of immigration, but of refugee resettlement, of being a place of safety for those fleeing violence and persecution. And we need to return to that shared heritage again. And so the hope is that in being reminded of our heritage and living our common heritage of assisting populations in crisis as they rebuild and make extraordinary contributions as new Americans, we are able to rebuild a commitment to welcome, and a culture of welcome that leads to a commitment to welcome, and creates again the public and political space to provide refuge to all who seek it.
And for those who are still trying to get to the United States, what does Nadia hope we have learned from this situation?
I hate to think about the next group of people who are going to be in need. But we know that it happens, whether it's because of political unrest or natural disaster or whatever it may be. There will be people in need. And so one of the measures of how much we have learned and grown during this cycle is, how do we respond? How quickly are we able to mobilize? How smoothly are we able to create the types of networks that are necessary to mobilize the resources that are necessary to create as soft a landing as possible for these individuals, and to see them really as individuals, as individual stories, as individual potentials, rather than a mass of people, because that becomes dehumanizing, right? It's understanding that each single one is a story, each single one is a powerful narrative. That's really important. And then, we're going to take a look. The Afghan community will have a record because we will be interconnected. So we will know where these folks are, what's going on in the community, how these families are faring, how are their children doing in school, what's going on in the job situation, how many new skills have been acquired, how many new people are watching, favorite TV shows, like all of the things that are, how are they becoming Americans? That's going to be really important.
And as these new stories take shape, we hope that they are tales of dreams, joy, and optimism. A story of immigrants, refugees, and America. Like this story Nazanin told me at the end of our conversation.
I was in Kansas City, where refugees from many, many backgrounds have been resettled and have been a real force for revitalizing the city. And I was visiting refugee-owned businesses, right? I think it's not very well known. Refugees start businesses at a rate 50% higher than native populations, right? They're job creators. So I was visiting a refugee-owned business, and it was run by two Bhutanese women. And they had the storefront was, now it sold Bhutanese cosmetics and food and grocery supplies. But they had something of an Ethiopian restaurant out in front, and I was super confused by that. And it turned out that the person who had owned the storefront previously was a refugee from Ethiopia, but he had started this restaurant. It had been really successful. And so he had moved on and he had opened like a bigger restaurant, employed more people, and moved his Ethiopian restaurant on. And this Bhutanese refugees had moved into the storefront. But his customers kept coming back to the store looking for their Ethiopian lunch. And so they're like, all right, that's cool. They hired an Ethiopian chef and started serving Ethiopian lunch at their Bhutanese grocery and makeup supply store. Like, again, only in America. Like, we should all love that story. We should all love that happens in our country.
Nazanin Ash is the CEO of Welcome.us. She previously served as the Vice President of Global Policy and Advocacy at the International Rescue Community. Nadia Hashimi is a member of the National Welcome Council at Welcome.us. She's also a pediatrician turned novelist who draws on her Afghan culture to craft internationally best-selling books for all ages. You can learn more about their work on our website, immigrationforum.org/podcast. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe to Only in America wherever you are listening to this episode. Only in America is produced and edited by Katie Lutz, Joanna Taylor, and Becca Wall. Our artwork and graphics are designed by Carla Leha. I'm Ali Nirani, and I will talk to you next week.
Support for the National Immigration Forum comes from the Carnegie Corporation of New York, supporting innovations in education, democratic engagement, and strengthening international peace and security. And from Humanity United. When humanity is united, we can bring a powerful force for human dignity.